My sister got married last weekend. I flew into town and my parents insisted that I stay with them instead of in a hotel as I wanted. My parents are consistently late for everything. It's a Latin thing, but I hate being late. I think it's disrespectful. The wedding was at 2:30. My folks live about a half hour away from the church. Noon rolls up and my folks still need to get ready. They are adults and I'm over dealing with them. I get ready, I send for an Uber, and I'm at the church at 2 o'clock. I check in with my sister. She asked me if I had any problems getting my parents to the church. I told her that I had come by myself. She goes white and says that I'm responsible for getting them there on time. Well, nobody asked me to do that. I didn't even want to stay there. So now everyone has started calling my parents. They're getting ready. They were about 35 minutes late. The service was shortened because there was another wedding later that day. Everyone is still mad at me for not getting my parents there on time. My aunt says that I was an idiot for messing up the timing of the wedding. My mom says it's my fault for not reminding them to get ready. Am I the only one who thinks adults should be on time for their own kid's wedding without help? Not the idiot. If they need to be reminded to get ready on their daughter's wedding day, they need a live-in caretaker. Unless you were specifically asked to get them to the church, that's not your job. If your sister truly thinks you messed up the wedding by being on time, it's a good time for some space between you and your family. Your mother needs reminding to get ready for her own daughter's wedding? Wow, no wonder you wanted to stay in a hotel. These entire dynamics are so frustrating. I really want OP to tell the parents. I'm so worried about you, since you weren't able to get ready for your sister's wedding on time by yourself. I knew you would never be late for such an important day, so I think we should schedule a visit with your doctor to make sure you're doing okay. Blink, blink. And your sister couldn't have asked you beforehand to ride herd on your parents to get them to the church on time? I'm guessing everyone's blaming you because you're the comfortable, stress-free option. People know that you're not going to blow up, start a screaming match outside their house, and then send in flying monkeys. Am I right? This sounds like a classic missing stairs situation where nobody wants to yell at the problem person directly because that person will never change. So they instead scream at everyone else for not managing around the problem person. You now know in the future to never stay with your parents or to be put in a position where you could be seen as responsible for them. This is the kind of thing that's easier to say on the internet and less realistic to do in real life. But I wish your sister had just started the wedding on time and locked your parents' lazy butts out of the church. I'm going against the grain and saying everyone's the idiot here. Your sister and parents suck for all the reasons everyone else is talking about. But you suck too for making a principal point on your sister's wedding day. This is your family. You knew how your parents would be. You say if you'd been told you were responsible for them, you'd have prodded them, which is fair, but you knew they were going to be late and you just let it happen. Your sister's wedding isn't the time to make this stand. The kind of thing to have done is herded your parents to the wedding as if it was an implicit request from your family, and then make it clear later that you didn't like that role and don't plan on ever doing it again. Yeah, it's not OP's responsibility, but I can't imagine being in a hotel with someone else going to the same wedding as I am, and instead of trying to motivate them to get ready to leave on time, just walking away entirely. Kind of an idiot move, just for the principal, especially when it's your sister and her parents. I feel bad for OP's sister. It is tough to find out your immediate family doesn't care about you on your wedding day. So I will try to keep a long story concise as best as possible. I, female 28, and my twin sister, Valerie, were born to a teen mom who raised us as best she could, but it led to us having very different ways of dealing with abandonment and unstable home life. My mom had a very strange relationship with Valerie since she was 17. She started partying, alcohol, and smoking. As her sister, I always tried my best supporting her, as my mother did, but I was more of a best friend, whereas my mom was the one to force her to sort out her life, rehab, etc. I, on the other hand, turned out to be very obsessed with having control and structure in my life, which has made it very difficult for me to maintain romantic relationships, as I can be controlling and paranoid about abandonment. Cut forward to when I went to uni. Valerie found herself in a very bad toxic relationship and practically cut my mother off, which severed their relationship entirely. She eventually got pregnant and gave birth to my nephew in my second year at uni. After struggling with romantic partners all my life and having very short-term boyfriends, I met my ex-fiancé, let's call him Dan, who I genuinely thought I'd met the one. During this time, Valerie had broken up with her toxic ex and was now a single mother, so Dan and I would have her and my nephews over most weekends. I, however, became pregnant, and a year after my daughter was born, Dan proposed. I had never been happier about starting my family. We decided to wait a year to get married and genuinely enjoyed our new family life. However, one weekend I decided to go see my mother and spend the day with her and my daughter, but we came home early since my mother was busy. When I arrived home, I saw Valerie's car outside, which wasn't unusual, and went inside. Nothing would have prepared me for what I would find. Valerie and Don were alone together in my bedroom, on my bed. It seemed like the deed had already been done. I went straight to packing for myself and my daughter, and I left. I gave Dan no chance for excuses and cut the both of them out of my life entirely, except for allowing Dan visitation to our daughter. Jump forward 3 years. I've barely spoken to Valerie, except when she pops back into my life to apologize or explain, but I don't care. There's no excuse she could give me. Furthermore, I'm now engaged to my beautiful fiancé Mark, and he loves my daughter and me more than I could ever imagine. My mother's now begging me to invite my sister to my wedding in June, saying to put the past in the past, since my mother has been able to forgive her and mend their relationship. I refused, which caused tension. She's telling me this may be the only way to fix our bond and for my daughter to have her aunt and cousin back, but I still refuse. So, am I the idiot? Majorly not the idiot. Your sister made her bed, slept in it with your man, and had no remorse. Not everything can be fixed. Your sister did the ultimate betrayal. You would not invite an ex-friend who did that to your wedding. Just because you share DNA with your sister doesn't change that. Your mother has a fantasy that all her kids will get along and return to the way it is. Your mother will never stop bothering you on that issue. I don't blame you. I wouldn't invite her either if I were you. There's no excuse for what happened. Once again, not everything can be fixed. Instead of worrying about this, have a great time planning for your wedding and getting married. This may be the only way to fix our bond. Nope, bond is broken. If you wanted to see whether establishing a new one was possible, that'd be one thing, but that's up to you. And for my daughter to have her aunt and cousin back, Dan is your daughter's father, yes? How exactly does she benefit from having the aunt who helped break up her family back in her life? It sucks for Valerie's kid that he'll miss out because of his mom's actions, but he can fix that when he's old enough to reach out. Until then, your mom can accept that Valerie's the reason that she doesn't get picture-perfect moments of family togetherness and keep her 2 cents to herself. And if she won't drop it, she doesn't need to be there either. I'm an 18-year-old female, and this is my last Christmas at home. I'm a senior in high school and plan to go to college next year. My parents divorced when I was 11. I live with my mom and see my dad whenever I want to. My dad remarried a few years ago, and he and his new wife have a baby that's a few months old. My mom is single. Since this is my last Christmas at home, I've asked my parents if we can do Christmas the way we did it when I was a child, for nostalgia's sake. I'd like for my dad to come spend Christmas Eve with me. He can stay the night on the couch or air mattress. He and Mom wake me up in the morning by singing carols and bringing me breakfast in bed. Then we spend all morning opening gifts, taking pictures, drinking cocoa, laughing, and being a family. Then my dad makes brunch. My mom and I make cookies together. And after, we visit my aunt and cousins on my mom's side, where there are more gifts, pictures, cocoa, and laughing. Plus, we play silly games all afternoon. Finally, my dad cooks dinner for everyone, and we watch Christmas movies, play charades, then chill out until bedtime, when my parents would tuck me in and stay beside me until I fell asleep. My mom said yes, we could do this, and she thinks it's a great idea to do since it's my last Christmas at home. When I asked my dad, he said he wasn't sure because it's not fair to his wife, and he doesn't want to miss the baby's first Christmas. My dad asked if he can invite his wife and baby. Mom and I said no because they're not part of this. He asked if I'd be willing to split the day between Mom and him, but I don't want to do that. Dad offered to come over and make breakfast and do the morning stuff and stay through brunch, but that's only part of the day. I kept trying to explain to my dad how important this last Christmas was to me to spend it with him and Mom, just us, doing it the way we did when I was little. My dad said he couldn't promise me the whole day and not spend any time with his wife and baby and his side of the family. He kept asking me to split the day, and I kept saying no, that this was the only way I wanted Christmas to go this year. So now my dad and I aren't speaking, and the last I heard from him was a text saying he was mailing my gifts and to contact him when I can be reasonable because my request is selfish and unrealistic. Am I the idiot? Oh dear me. I really want you to hear me out here. I understand why this is important to you, but I need you to really think about what you're asking for and why. And I also really need you to think about why your dad has refused when your mom hasn't. You've invested so much emotionally in this idea. In the process, you've convinced yourself that you should be more important and special than your stepmom and brother. Your dad has offered you a compromise, but you're so invested in what you want, you aren't considering anything else. I'm sorry, but you don't get to do that. And you don't get to compare your mom and dad here either. If you still want to have a dad at the end of all of this, you have to move on. Yes, you are the idiot. Sweetie, unfortunately, you can't go back in time. Your dad did everything to work with you. What you asked for, it was not only inappropriate, but also very selfish. He has not one baby, he has two. He tried to work with you and be there for his wife and new baby. His wife was even willing to work with you, which not many would. Be thankful you're surrounded by people who love you and don't ruin this Christmas by living in the past. He can stay the night on the couch or the air mattress? This is where OP 100% lost me. OP is 18, not a child. She should be able to recognize how exceptionally inappropriate this is. So OP demands that her dad ditch his wife and infant to sleep at his ex's house so that she can pretend to be a little kid again? OP, you may be young, but not that young. This is delusional and selfish behavior. Good on the dad for having a backbone. He gave very reasonable compromises, and OP wasn't being reasonable or living in reality. My mother passed away a few months ago. While we were cleaning out her house, my daughter-in-law, son's wife, took her box of handwritten recipes because she wanted to make a recipe book for Christmas for everyone in the family. I thought that was a nice idea, so I had no problem with her taking the recipes. Last Friday, we had a family dinner where she gave everyone the recipe books. It was very nice, and everyone loved them. I thought she'd bring the handwritten ones, but she didn't. I texted her on Saturday morning, asking if I could have them back the next time we see each other to make sure her grandkids get some of the handwritten ones, but I never got a response. My son came over yesterday with the box of recipes, but he told me his wife felt very disrespected. She made recipe books for all of us, and she didn't think I appreciated the effort, and I was being ungrateful asking for the handwritten ones back when she assumed they were given to her to keep, and she's disappointed she'll not have them. I never meant to give them to her to keep, just to make the nice recipe book, but most of the recipes in there are ones she never made. Daughter-in-law was only around for the last few years while she was sick and never really got to experience her cooking, so she left out most of my mother's staple dishes that she always made and all her grandkids remembered. I don't hold that against her, but it's the truth. I told my son I was sorry and did appreciate the book she made for everyone, but he told me they needed to take a little break for me. Not the idiot. Daughter-in-law did a kind thing by creating the books for everyone, but it doesn't automatically mean that she gets to keep the handwritten originals. She has the book of all the recipes that she felt were important, so she's not missing out on anything by you dividing the original copies amongst all the grandkids. It feels more like an ego thing rather than a sentimental one. Right. Not only did she try to take OP's mother's handwritten recipes, but she also left key recipes out of the book. She was purposely trying to steal her recipes and hoard them for herself, which is super messed up because OP was willing to share all the recipes with everyone. Then to call OP disrespectful because she wouldn't let her pretend they belonged to her. Daughter-in-law and son can take all the time they need if this is how they'll behave. The gesture of making and sharing the book was very thoughtful, but I would have never assumed I could have the handwritten recipes of someone who was not my biological grandmother and a relatively recent in-law. If someone who married into the family came to clean my late grandma's house and said, "Look at all those old pictures, I'll digitize them for everybody," I wouldn't then assume we had given up the family photos for them to keep. She can be upset if she wants, but in what world would you not have wanted your mother's stuff back? The entitlement of the daughter-in-law to think she deserves that kind of keepsake is mind-blowing. Sounds a bit narcissistic. My husband has a niece, teen, called Jenny. Everyone in the family adores Jenny. I've never met her dad, but apparently he's an abusive idiot. Jenny basically lives with her aunt and uncles. The family all dote on her. She can do no wrong. Unfortunately, my husband is worse than all of them. We have a toddler son, but my husband seems to love his niece more than our son. It's really frustrating because his family doesn't care about our son's accomplishments as much as Jenny. Like, "Oh, your son learned how to walk." Well, Jenny could walk when she was 1 week old. Now, the problem. Jenny's supposed to be with us for Christmas. I don't want her here. I want to have Christmas with my son and husband. I want my son to get all our attention. Jenny's other aunts and uncles are willing to have her on Christmas, so I asked my husband to let her be with them. He got mad at me and said it was our turn, and he wanted to have his niece with us. I told him I wanted to have Christmas for our family only, and he called me an idiot and said Jenny is family too. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. Your son is a toddler and won't even remember this Christmas. Stop punishing Jenny because her family loves her. It's one Christmas of many to come. She's a teenager and you're an adult. She obviously has a hard time with her parents, and her aunts and uncles are trying to make her feel loved by them. Take a long, hard look in the mirror and figure out who's the idiot in this situation, because it's weird and smacks of jealousy. Not the idiot. It isn't jealousy if people continually throw the other person in your face. For example, when my daughter was a teenager, she started riding horses. The woman who was teaching her had a niece who was very competitive in the sport. Every time my daughter did or said something, this woman would roll her eyes and say, "Well, you're not like Tina then. Tina did X, Y, and Z." It got to the point where every mention of Tina just made us want to run the other way. It really was nauseating, and I can see why OP doesn't want that atmosphere this Christmas. Everyone's the idiot here. OP clearly has issues with the fact that Jenny has become the center of the family's affection because she's effectively an orphan whom they all share the care of. There also seems to be a massive miscommunication between OP and her husband. The husband likely sees Jenny as more of his child than his niece. He's just got a lot of co-parents to work with. OP does not see Jenny as her stepdaughter. That's leading to some mismatched expectations that in turn lead to hurt feelings. OP, I think it's time for couples counseling. Everyone's a little bit wrong, but everyone is also a little right, and I'm not sure if the nuances of the situation will be navigated without help.